So then, if you awaken from this illusion,
Persistence of vision.
Ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the beautiful downtown North Door Lounge Bar for this live episode of the Persistence of Vision podcast.
Hooray! That is beautiful. Hello, folks. I'm Lance Fever Myers.
And I'm LB Dio.
And this is the Persistence of Vision podcast. If you want to see us online or read any of the amazing content we have up there, the website is pov-publishing.com. We have comics by Walt Holcomb, Shannon Wheeler, Penny Van Horn, myself, a bunch of cool stuff. We have essays, we have poetry, and you can follow the link that's up there to buy my novel, Why So Much? ?
Why so much?
Go check it out, please.
Yeah.
Go
Great
buy
book.
it, read it, be amazed.
What do you think, Lance Fever, about the fact that we have so many plosives in the Persistence of Vision Publishing podcast?
I love it. I love it. We need a banner. We need lights. We need... Well, we do have a banner. We do have lights.
We have a banner. We have lights. What are you talking about? This is a podcast.
Get the pyros. Do it up.
We're recording this from the Yankee Stadium of the South, the North Door Lounge Bar. We're very grateful to be here. We love the people, and we love our guest for this evening.
Who is our guest today?
Our guest this evening is a very talented and brilliant filmmaker who has directed, who has edited, who has written, who is, what can I say? I mean, his work, his short film Casablanca appeared in the Sundance Film Festival. He has edited such movies as Boyhood, which, won the Golden Globe.
I have to say, the assistant editor.
Yeah.
But you did go to the Academy Awards. I saw the photo.
You went to the Academy Awards for...
I don't want Sandra Adair to say, wait a minute, I thought I edited that movie. But
we haven't introduced you yet. You don't exist yet, man.
Bring him to life. Who is
All
this
right,
man?
this guy is Mr. Mike Saenz.
Woo! Mastodon fan and Moby-Dick reader.
Yes. Tell us, what is the name of the book? The name, it may have slipped out, but what is the name of the book you came here to discuss?
I came
Mike
here
Saenz.
to discuss classic of American literature, Moby-Dick in the first editions and others, but it sometimes gets dropped. I'll have you know.
Yeah.
And I know some people are sticklers for hyphens, so I wanted to point that out on the radio.
Yes, Lance and I, before the show, were discussing the fact that in the movie Zelig, Woody Allen's character, Zelig, first starts turning into the human chameleon and becoming other people when he encounters a group of fairly erudite people who are discussing Moby-Dick, and he doesn't want to admit that he's never read it. Now, I thought that was pretty apposite because none of us have read Moby-Dick, isn't that right?
That's correct. It's my favorite book, but I've not read it.
I don't think Mike has ever even read it.
No.
We're just here to act like we've read it.
I just wanted to try to get you guys to read it.
Smart.
I think it's cool because, it's your favorite book, and you don't want to risk that, right, by actually reading it.
No, it's an ideal.
What if you read it and it sucked?
Yeah, well, it's interesting because I read it, loved it, carried it with me, read it, and then rereading it for this podcast. For a while, I was like, "Wow, I'm not as into it as I was in college."
Is that right? Really?
I came around again, and I came around again after I finished it and thought, that was great. And there are times, we're hearing music. There are times when I thought, okay, I used to think this is great. This is like hundreds of pages about the dimensions of a whale skull, but I get the point. Melville, it's great. And now I'm just, as a film editor, reading and thinking, okay, well, the narrative part of this book is a tiny, tiny percentage of the number of pages that were devoted to it.
Yeah, there's about 4 pages of story.
Right, and I can tell you, it's about a man who really, really hates an animal.
Yes.
As Ron Swanson said, and it's correct.
Wait, so you said back in college, is that when you first read it?
Yeah, I did read it. I was an English major, English and American Lit, and
where did you go to college?
I went to Brown University.
Ooh, big shot.
Sundance, the
Ivy
Academy
League.
Awards, Brown.
I'm dropping
We're
names
among
left
greatness.
and right. Yeah, we've got Melville, Moby-Dick, Sundance,
They
Brown,
get this
Casablanca,
man a
which
stronger
wasn't.
drink.
I do need a stronger drink.
So, what was it that first captivated you about this book? What was it that drew you in and had you label it your favorite?
It was assigned.
Oh, I see. This will now be your favorite book.
It was assigned that it has to be your favorite. I hate to use the word epic because it doesn't really mean anything, but it's a book about some person's intense hatred. And it's a whale.
Yeah. Well, we're going to have a drinking game tonight. I'm
Yes.
glad you mentioned that word.
Sorry.
The drinking game is that anyone who says the word whale has to take a drink.
Yeah, I thought it'd make it interesting.
Yes, this was actually Mike's idea, and now he is paying the price. As is
often will
always
it
the
come up?
case with drinking games, you have to wonder, what is the disincentive about taking a drink? I don't know.
I never liked drinking games because it made drinking a punishment.
Yeah,
It's a bad attitude.
it's just wrong. Anyway, go on, please. Tell us, what is Moby-Dick even about?
Moby-Dick. Here's the story. It's about, well, here's the plot. Ishmael. Just some guy who suffers from depression, just walking around Manhattan thinking, oh, God, I feel it coming. But he has a solution. Whenever this happens, he goes to sea. But not just like, he doesn't want to pay money to travel the world because he doesn't have any money. So, but it's better to get paid to travel the world. So he's going to go on a ship. He's done the merchant ship. He's going to go off, sail the seas, and maybe find a whaling ship and then get better, because otherwise that's his solution to suicidal impulses. So in this book, we call that irony, because he decides it'll be one of many instances.
And speaking of Ishmael, the book has one of the most famous opening lines in all of literature. Hi, my name is Ishmael.
Hello,
Indeed.
everyone. You can refer to me as Ishmael from here on out.
Yeah, it also goes on for
Hey!
several pages, saying the same. Call me, refer
Call
to
me.
me.
Yeah.
I'm trying not to. I am worried about my own drinking game because I've got witnesses now.
Okay, so Ishmael, you are telling us that he is feeling down. He feels like he may just throw himself over the fence into the river, and he decides to take a sailing voyage in order to fight the depression.
Indeed. So he goes from Manhattan to New Bedford on the way to Nantucket to find a whaling ship. And in New Bedford, he walks into a lodge to try and find a place for the night in a place called the Metaphor Inn, or it's called the Spouter Inn, owned by Peter Coffin. We're not being subtle here. And the place is packed. It's full. He can't find a place. But he says, you know what, you can share a bed if you want. There's a harpooner who might be, there are a lot of plosives.
Plosives.
Sibilants. There's a harpooner. He's carrying around shrunken heads, probably trying to sell them before Sunday, but he's cool. And
You can sleep in the same
you
bed
can
with this
sleep in the
dude.
same bed with this dude. He probably won't mind.
Yeah.
So Ishmael takes a bunk, and he's sitting there, and then in comes this over 6 foot tall center of a basketball team giant man with a giant harpoon and a shrunken head and an idol. His name is Queequeg. He's tattooed from head to toe.
Queequeg, folks.
Queequeg, everyone. And hijinks ensue. They scare each other. Queequeg is like, "Hey, bro, you're in my bed," and he's like, Peter Coffin, come here. And they're like, "Hey, I thought you'd find this funny." Yeah, Queequeg, Ishmael, cool, funny. You guys are bunking together. Is that cool? And Queequeg's like, "Yeah, sure, that's fine. Hang out." So they become best friends. And in the book itself, they say, "Hey, we're kind of married now. Cool?" And they're like, "Yeah, sure, we'll be married." They smoke together. They talk about their lives, their dreams. They get on a boat, and this boat is doomed. And I don't want to spoil it.
And who happens to be, let's say, I don't know, the captain of this boat?
The captain of this boat is, how shall I describe Ahab? Well, the thing about this book is every few pages, every chapter is an omen that says, stop this right now, or stop reading. It's going to get bad. Ahab, there's an air of mystery about him. They say, hey, who's the captain? And the two Quakers who actually own the boat and hire the people are like, oh, it's Ahab. He's like, what, Ahab, like the king? And yeah, like the king. He's like the one that was so vile that the dogs licked his blood. Don't worry about
he's
that.
Okay.
He's okay. He didn't name himself. It was his deranged mother. Oh, okay, no problem. Can I talk to him? He won't talk to you. But
so he's like a godless son of a bitch. So he's like, yeah, but go ahead.
Go ahead.
Get on board.
He didn't name himself Lucifer. It's fine. So he, he's very mysterious guy, and they say, well, I heard some things, and they're like, hey, don't ever say that. Okay, he's great. I would follow him to the ends of the earth. Everybody would. A whale demasted his ship and demasted him. So he's got
we need to take a drink. You said whale.
Oh, I was scared we weren't recording.
No, we're recording.
Did I say whale?
You.
Oh, there you go.
Oh, he's good at this game.
I think he's winning.
Yeah,
Okay,
winning
so
the game.
I'm
Ahab
winning.
is an intense gentleman, a Quaker.
He's very intense. He has a leg made of ivory out of leviathan bone.
What happened to his leg?
A giant monster of a leviathan cetacean creature,
Very good.
90 feet long. I can make it up later, and I will, because I'm just going to get some credit here.
Yes, he's taking a sip. If you can't tell at home.
Yeah, which you'll
Earning
be able to
credit.
tell soon enough, I guess. He was attacked. His ship was attacked. He lost his ship. He lost his leg to this monster of a metaphor, the 90-foot whale, which I did, Moby-Dick, as he is known. And he kind of disappears for a little while. They take on the ship. I'm just going to skip ahead because we are at the very beginning of the story, but yet like a third of the way into the book because we digress a lot to talk about fishing, whalery. Is that? Do I get derivatives of this?
You get to read.
Do you guys talk about anything on this, or am I just going to sit here and drink?
Well,
We're
okay,
gonna-
I would like to analyze this though, because when you talk about Moby Dick to anyone and they've read it and they say, "Oh my God," they go into detail about the whale oil and all the minutia of being a whale. Right, give me a sip.
Wait, is no one else even playing?
No one else is
You're
playing.
the only one.
This is my idea
Yes,
for everyone
it's
but
a solo-
me. But I'll
solo
drink for
venture.
you, Lance.
So, but why in such a well-regarded book does he go into such minutia with this stuff?
People had very low standards of literature back then, and
Get away with it.
you could get away with it. I think Melville's like padding his paper a little bit.
They didn't have the internet.
They didn't have the internet. Nobody had seen a whale. Huh? I can't keep this up. But people hadn't seen these creatures. Yeah, they weren't everyday occurrences. You couldn't just Google it. So we had to spend a lot of time, not nearly as much time as we do, talking about, look, guys, stick with me. This thing is really, really scary, really, really big. Its skull weighs this much and so on. And it's like being on a train compartment with somebody who is obsessed with Star Wars, who's telling you everything about Star Wars and every Star Wars character and tells you like Bib Fortuna and Kip Fisk, and you're like,
So
okay, I
it's-
get it.
it's heaven.
But it's bound to. Does it not add to the story though?
It does add a lot to the story, and it serves its intended effect. The Melville writes in contrasts, a lot of contrasts. So different characters have different approaches to their obsessions about the challenges of life. For example, Ahab's challenge was that he was attacked and disfigured, and it's also, I don't know if I'd go so far. Should I call him monomaniacal? He's a bit obsessed, maybe.
I think that's probably okay.
Probably okay. I don't want to be unfair. But he to back up a little bit, this is a whaling town. Now I'm stuttering every time I hear whaling because I see what's coming next.
Can somebody get this man another drink?
So this book
Yeah,
is about
this
a
is
man
Ryan
from
the
Nantucket.
Yeah. Before they set sail, Queequeg and Ishmael go to church in New Bedford, and the pulpit of this church. This is a company town, whaling town. The pulpit is a ship mast. Father Mapple, who is played by Orson Welles in the movie, climbs up, pulls the little rope up, delivers his sermon to the shipmates, and gives a fire and brimstone speech about Jonah. Where this book doesn't,
Wait, you're telling me there's a movie?
There's a movie!
Did you read 900 pages of?
I'll tell you one thing that one thing that really tripped me out when I read Moby-Dick, because I did actually read it. Unlike some people at this table. All my life growing up, I always thought about sailing people, and especially pirates and so forth, saying ye and thee. Yeah, avast ye swabs, thee will go to whatever. Well, and then I read Moby Dick, and it's just Ahab. He's the only one who talks that way because he's a damn Quaker. That's how Quakers talk. It's not a sailor thing at all.
No, it's not. You were misled.
I was badly misled, and I'm never going to trust another cartoon.
But every time you get the one-legged captain,
Yeah, exactly. They don't all have one leg either.
that's Ahab. He's got. I mean, it's funny. I mean, in a weird way. I mean, maybe I hate to be ableist. It's amusing that he has a little hole in his ship where he puts his little peg and then spins around, and and I hate to laugh at that. That's terrible, Lance. But it's true. It's a factual tale.
You both bring up something interesting about, the fact that this book has had such an influence on popular culture. Well, how do you explain that? If we're going on for page after page after page, and it's so boring, and people roll their eyes, and oh my God, I want to see the movie rather than read the book. But seriously, why did this have such an impact, and why do we know the iconic characters and all the tropes?
Okay, a show of hands. I'm just going to look over 100,000 people.
Yes.
Just make an estimate. How many people have actually read the book here? I'd say in its sure, yes.
That sea of people.
Okay,
So
let's
Look at all those
say
hands.
30%. So like
30%,
30,000 people.
Yes, 30,000 people.
How many of you know the story already, just from pop culture?
Everyone knows the story of
100,000
Moby-Dick.
people. So that's kind of your point, but it's a very simple story. It's we get on the ship. Ahab's like, "Hey guys, how's it going? I know we're here in the good commerce business of whaling. Here we go.
Spermaceti oil.
And we're going to find these creatures. We're going to crack their heads open and use the spermaceti, and we're going to render their fat, and we're going to do all sorts of great things. And it's a wonderful and noble thing. We all know that. But here's the thing. I lost my leg, and I can't get over it. It was this giant monster that is rumored to be in different oceans at once throughout time. It's not at all allegorical. It's a real actual whale, and we're going to find this one particular whale in the entire ocean that hurt me really bad, and I kind of don't care what it takes to do that, and everything else is secondary. I don't care how much money has been invested in this. How's that sound? It may kill everybody on board, but I just got to do this thing because otherwise life is meaningless. And everyone's like, the one thing Ahab has, he's charismatic. People like him. Well, he is, they talk about the sultanism is the word he uses, the authoritarianism, the fascism. I don't want to, read too much into it. But, one guy on this ship is God. He's God, the sheriff, and the Pope, and his name is Ahab. He's also a captain. And there is no questioning him, and everyone is like, I'm in. It's cool. And, one person in this speech where Ahab comes up and says, hey, anyone sees the white whale, here's a doubloon. Gold doubloon, nail it to the mast. First person who sees him gets this. Everybody on board, we're going to swear our blood oath to destroy this animal. And everyone's like, love it. I am in. And the first mate's like, okay, hang on. This seems a little much, right? Because we were supposed to get oil, and the people have invested money in this, and it seems dangerous. And Ahab's like, well, come on, everybody's into it. Like, oh, thank God I convinced him. I thought that'd be harder. And everyone's like, yeah, let's do it, because this guy, we like this guy. We're scared of him. He's clearly crazy, but we're on board. And they just chase this one thing in the entire world in this ocean, and things start going terribly, terribly wrong. Omens happen left and right, and everyone's like, okay, well, maybe we shouldn't have done this, but it's too late. Everybody dies except one person, and it's a simple story. It's terrifying, and we are all on that boat.
So it's an epic, exotic,
Oh, yeah.
massive, grand tale about a very simple human failing.
Yes.
And don't forget about Star Trek II, The Wrath of Khan.
Oh, I was going there. I was going to go there because, well, I don't know what more to say other than to the last I grapple with thee. From hell's heart I stab at thee. For hate's sake I spit my last breath at thee.
Star Trek.
Star Trek.
Let's hear it. Come on,
Let's
folks.
hear it. Thus I give up the spear.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder what it would be like. I remember when I read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde for the first time, and going into that,
Never heard of it.
I was very excited. I was ready to read this iconic piece of work, and I read it and I thought, well, of course it's the same guy. What?
Right,
It's
right.
Like, I'm not surprised.
Oh, it's supposed to be a mystery that they're the same guy? I never read it.
And so what would it have been like to read Moby-Dick for the first time and not know the story?
Right. And I think I haven't read Dr. Jekyll and Mr. Hyde, but is it supposed to be?
It's supposed to be a mystery that why is this doctor protecting this awful person?
Right.
This doctor in good standing with society and everything is super nice by all accounts, and he's protecting this horrible human being that does all these crimes and everything, and people want to go after Mr. Hyde, and he's like, no, it's the same dude,
Yeah.
right? And we all know that. But when you're reading it, and I can't imagine what it would have been like to read it for the first time and not know, and what a surprise and crazy feeling that would be. So I wonder if something is like that, like you said, everyone here knows the story of Moby-Dick. But if you didn't, what would it have been like to read that story not knowing?
Well, you would have to ask 3,000 people during Melville's life, because that's
Right.
the number of people who actually bought the book.
Wow.
And
3,000 copies.
3,000 copies, and they didn't sell out, and I think there was a fire, and they lost the rest of the first edition, and they didn't bother to reprint it for, I don't even know if Melville lived long enough for them to reprint it. It was his last big chance, and it didn't do that well, and he thought, well, okay, I'll write some poetry and some short stories now, and it really only took off in the 1920s, or, so to answer your question, people probably had to hear about it and then think, okay, they had to have it spoilered.
It is extraordinary to think about that small sales run, because it certainly is more or less without peer among American novels in terms of its reputation and impact on world literature.
It's amazing, surprising.
So in 70 years, everyone's going to know the iconic tale of Why So Much. Is that right?
Indeed, well, yeah.
So much,
If we all do our jobs.
folks. Yeah, if some people among the 100,000 in our audience would just go to pov-publishing.com.
There you go.
Right. So there are a lot more people here who have than who have read Moby-Dick during Melville's life.
It's a wonderful slice of life from the past also to think about the significance of whaling. I mean, nowadays whaling seems pretty barbaric. Oh, sorry. Thank you. What, did you refill this?
Yeah, it was refilled.
I completely missed that. Somehow his drink is full.
People saw the pace.
But, at the time that this book was written, whale oil ran everything around us.
There you go, Dan.
Yes, no, the world ran on this kind of oil,
Yes.
the spermaceti
Seti oil.
that we don't even think about that anymore. But if you had a lamp, if you had a street lamp, if you had another lamp or a lamp,
Yes.
it would be
It's a lamp.
full of this oil. And
Is
so,
that right?
Yes. And
I
so,
don't think I realized that.
yeah, well, you should read the book. He talks about that.
I think there's an audio book, too.
Oh, gotcha.
Who was Herman Melville?
No, they don't talk about the lamps in the movie.
Oh, no, they do not have a 6.5 hour long digression about the nobility of farming this kind of oil. And I say farming because I don't want to use the derivative either, but, harvesting this oil from the leviathan, the cetacean creature of the white
Thing.
White thing.
The white thing.
Oh, speaking of the whiteness, there's a great passage in the
Yes.
book, isn't there, about what the color white, how in the East the color white is the color of death. It is the funereal color, whereas in the West it's black, and how powerful an idea of white as a symbol of death, that blankness. It's quite haunting.
It is. It's the,
And that also did not make it into the comic book, which you were kind enough to bring with you.
I'm a big fan of Bill Sienkiewicz, who is a legend, and I really, I hope we add him on Twitter or whatever, because
He's a comic artist.
amazing comic artist.
And he did this. You were holding in your right hand
The Moby-Dick Classics Illustrated.
Moby-Dick's, Classics Illustrated comic book, and it is a magnificent work. And we noticed that the entire book appears to be about 25 pages long, and yet it probably has the entire plot of Moby-Dick in it.
Yeah, we're more than halfway through, guys. I'm not going to digress as much, but yeah, when they're on the seas, they meet other ships, one of which we call them gams. These meetings, because nice gams. That if you're on the open sea and you see another ship, it's kind of rude, I guess, just to keep going. In the middle of all of that, 70% of the Earth, and one in particular, every time they come, if I quote somebody, it doesn't count because I got to pace myself. But every time they meet another ship, Ahab comes out with his horn and just hails the captain, has seen the white whale. First thing he says, hey, have you seen Star Wars? It's great. Let me tell you. He's nuts. And that's all he says. And Ishmael, by the way, his digressions about whaling and all that other stuff, it's weird because you meet two different people. Ishmael survives the voyage. He's the only one who survives the voyage. Ahab didn't, he was demasted in his other voyage, and his response is to go strike this thing down throughout the ocean. Ishmael is like, wow, lucky I survived that. I'm going to go off and study whales and talk about whales and go on train compartments with hapless passengers telling you for hundreds of pages, hey, did you know that, whale oil is used to anoint kings? It's like, yes, we get it. Okay. You survived a shipwreck. But, Ahab says, hey, have you seen the white whale? And the captain holds up his hand, and it's a hammer made out of ivory. It's like, oh, cool, you did. And he's like, yeah, it was a monster. It nearly killed everybody. Where is it? Oh, it's over there somewhere. Yeah, remember how they had to put my bone on, and they're all laughing about it. And he's like, where's the whale? And they're like, oh, my God, dude, is your captain crazy? And everyone's like, yeah, But we all took a blood oath, so what are you going to do? And different ways of handling that.
So much of life comes down to whether you have a sense of humor, doesn't it?
Ahab he's not known for his sense of humor.
No, it's not his strength.
No, but he's got charisma. There are certain charismatic leaders who will not laugh at anything, including themselves, and especially themselves. Ahab's one of them. And so when it's like, hey, it's just a dumb whale, Starbuck, our first mate, who's the one person who resists. And this is why we have Starbucks coffee, by the way, another
Yes.
ubiquitous cultural contribution from Moby-Dick.
Never heard of it.
Yeah, it's
Should read the book.
It's all right. And Starbucks says, like, come on. It's just a whale, and you got to get on with your life. And he was like, I'd strike the sun if it insulted me. It's like, okay. So some people just lash out and swing at every pitch. Am I getting too?
No, this
I
is
wonder-
great.
yeah.
This is great. Go ahead.
We're doomed. And
Right. We're on a
And
ship. We're
wouldn't
on
it-
a
wouldn't it-
ship.
Can you imagine though if Ahab had just like thought about it for a second and gone, "You're right. I need to get on with my life. This is crazy. I'm going to get everybody killed." I mean,
yeah.
but that's what's so great about that type of personality, that leadership type, who inevitably you find they never have that nuance, right? They never say it was, if you think about it, pretty much a great hour, for them. They said it was their finest hour. It's got to be an absolute, because that's how you move people.
Right, which he can do. And there's a moment later in the book where Starbuck is sitting there and Ahab's just thinking, things are going wrong. There's a giant storm, and he's like, look, we're going into the storm. And they're like, maybe not. It's like, no, we're going into the storm. They go into the storm. There's lightning. There's St. Elmo's fire. He's got a scar down him, this whole thing that they call him Old Thunder. It's elemental. And they come out of the storm. They're sailing east. And in the morning, he's like, why is the sun at our what is it, 4? The bow, and they're like, well, yeah, that's weird that we're at a stern behind us. It's like, but we're sailing east. It's like, no, the sun's behind us. Well, the compass is reversed because of the magnetism. And they're like, oh, okay, well, don't worry about it. Just sail against your compass. Metaphor. And he comes and makes his own compass. He's like, hey, I can make a magnet and we'll have a new needle. Metaphor. They're following this guy, and it's like, oh, I threw away my compass, but that's okay. Metaphor. We'll follow you. And Ahab's sitting there thinking, God, sometimes I wonder if I'm even can control myself. And Starbucks like, you don't have to do this. We can go home. I can see my wife and my kids. And he says, yeah, but it's not up to me. Right. I think I'm in control. I think I can do this. But you know what? This is bigger than me. I have to find out what's behind that whiteness, what's behind that thing, because I can tame it. And if I can't, I want to know what it is. And if it's nothing, then I want to know what it is. But I got to do this. This isn't up to me. I'm just the messenger. Let's go. That's the closest we get to a moment of doubt.
Yeah.
And people eat that up. And then they're all clinging to, the boat as it's sinking. And one person survives. So it may not go well.
Yeah, we're not going to give away anything, but everyone dies.
Yeah, everyone dies except for our narrator. And it's funny you mentioned the original run of the book and everybody knowing it didn't do well, and they released it in England, and it didn't have that epilogue. The ship goes down. There's a vortex. It's the whale's just brushing them off. People are dying. The ship is creating this everyone's, it's bloody, and everyone goes down. Boom. Ahab is the last person there with the spear. And we quoted the Wrath of Khan earlier. Yeah. And he throws the spear. The spear hits Moby-Dick. Moby-Dick's like, okay, well, enough of this. Dives. The rope comes and wraps around Ahab's neck, carrying him down to the depths of the ocean. He knows it's going to happen. But again, he's like, well, I'm the messenger. My ship's gone. This is the way it goes.
Okay, but don't tell what happens at the end of the
No. You guys don't need to watch the movie.
Read the comic.
Read the comic book, or listen to the audio book, or watch The Wrath of Khan. And then they didn't have an epilogue. And then in England, they had the book, and they were like, well, who wrote the book? Like, if everyone dies,
right?
Who wrote the book?
Sure.
And Melville's like, Are you kidding me? Are you fucking kidding me?
I
already said
1,000-page book, and I never thought of that.
Like, I told these stories halfway through the book, from Ishmael after the journey. Like 2 years, he's 2 years later saying, hey, I had this thing, and they're like, oh, cool, that's a cool story, yeah, and then we just moved past it. And that's not enough? No, I don't know how these words got on this page. If everyone died, it's like, not everyone died, so he wrote an epilogue. People got hung up on that for 40 years.
They'd never seen American Beauty.
No, they hadn't seen or Sunset Boulevard or anything.
That's why we need people like you, Mike Saenz. We need editors.
Right.
People will get confused. Look, one line. Just put one line earlier in the movie where, whatever. They didn't listen.
Lance Fever Myers, I think we're ready for our lightning round.
Are we ready for the lightning round? Let's do this.
I've been told about the lightning round, and I was offered
It's
whether I should
far
know or
more
be
horrible
blind.
than you can possibly have been told.
So what it is, we ask the same battery of questions to every guest that comes along, and then we rate them on how they answer.
Oh, cool. So it's a competition.
That's right.
All right, well.
Prepare to be judged.
As always.
You ready?
I am ready.
Here it comes. Tell us about the first time you fell in love with a book.
Wow. First time I fell in love with a book was Kurt Vonnegut. It's not even my favorite book, but Kurt Vonnegut. I think it was Hocus Pocus. And I'd read other books of his, and I thought, oh, his new one came out. It's like when you listen to a record from a famous band, but you remember the first release that came out while you were a fan.
Right.
And that's what Hocus Pocus was.
Okay. I love it. Okay, so has a book ever changed your mind?
Whale.
Well, let me.
No, has a book ever
that's
changed?
That's a drink.
Right.
Has a book ever changed my mind? A nonfiction book I was reading for research on a documentary against the death penalty. And the documentary, I already had reservations and was against the death penalty. But in research, I read a book that had 8 people arguing about the death penalty, both for and against. And it was against 4, against 4, against 4, or whatever. But they were back and forth. And each chapter subtly changed my mind, although I wasn't 100% convinced. But I thought to myself, okay, I can see this argument. That's the one that comes up in the lightning round.
So you didn't change your mind.
We'll see.
God damn.
He changed his mind every time.
Every
he flipped
time.
the page.
I'm not indecisive. I decide 100% every time I change my mind.
Every
that I
chapter
commit
changed
to
your
it.
mind. Has a book ever changed your life?
I think this book changed my life in some ways. That, as I mentioned, that it was assigned to me. It was fate. It wasn't up to me, but I read it, and it's very elemental, and it sticks with me as an interpretation of. It's different now that I know types who are megalomaniacal and sociopathic now in my life, but I think Moby-Dick changed my life. Catch-22 changed my life.
Also a hyphenated title.
Indeed. I used to not travel without a copy of Catch-22.
Ooh. Is there someone you identify with in Moby-Dick in particular?
It's interesting. It's a very interesting question. I hate to identify. Yeah, you should have a podcast. I hate to identify with Ahab. I think he's the way you don't want to approach slights or life or whatever. But we're all human, and you get angry, and you're like, God damn it! You know, how dare they, life? How dare life? And most of the time, you just think, well, it's not personal. I identify with Starbuck. I hope to be the person on the ship to say, hey, maybe don't.
Stand down, motherfucker.
And here's some coffee. Has a book ever made you cry?
Oh, God. I wish I'd asked for these in advance. No, hell no. What the hell? What do you take me for?
That's the Graham Reynolds answer. Graham Reynolds came on our show, and we asked him that, and he said, no book has ever made me cry, and I do not cry.
Wow. Well, that's Graham. That's why he's
That's why he's Graham Reynolds.
Graham Reynolds'
and we're not.
tears cure cancer. Too bad he never cries.
the answer to that question is yes, but I can't recall it because I blocked it out because it was so horrific.
You were so embarrassed.
Right. So embarrassed.
Blubbering.
Blubbering.
Right. Okay. Let's see. Name a book that you have read more than once.
Moby-Dick.
Fantastic. Do you have
22.
here's the $1 million question. Okay. Can you dazzle us with any poetry committed to memory?
Dazzle?
Do you have
Or
any
at
poetry
least
committed to
say
memory?
it. Yeah.
I am nervous about my mistress eyes are nothing like the sun. I'm starting to fade. I'm going to say no.
That is usually the answer in the
Is
lightning
it
round.
the
yes,
sonnet?
yes. I think we've had maybe
you can
two.
try the sonnet.
Coal is far
give the sonnet
more
a
red
try.
than her lips red. If hair, oh God, I'm fading. I was an English major in a different lifetime.
Okay, I've been.
You know that there's a poem based on Moby-Dick called "The Man from Nantucket."
It's a limerick.
Yeah, it's a limerick. It's written in the limerick style from Ireland.
You said earlier about a Rated X podcast.
Oh yeah, that's right.
All right. Did I drop the F-bomb yet?
I did.
Oh, fuck. All right.
Well, I think that's it, right? That's the end of the lightning round. Do we have anything else we can talk about?
Well, is there anything you would still like to say, Mike Saenz?
we're all on the ship.
We are.
We're all on the ship.
Are you a Starbuck or are you an Ahab? I don't know. Are you just, I don't know.
Are you just an Ishmael writing down what happened?
Writing down what happened. A scholar and a gentleman who's,
Just saying, hi, my name's Ishmael.
hi.
Okay.
Sup?
Okay. I have to ask though. So, because this conversation came up on the car ride over, we're all dancing around it, right? With the our current leader, our current commander in chief.
Whale.
What is
I'm sorry. I feel like we're avoiding words.
what is his obsession? What is, if we're gonna make that?
That's a great
comparison,
question
what
because it
is
was the one thing I knew I would say when I got here, and I was prepared to forget about it.
Oh yeah.
I was going to say that we are all on the Pequod,
Right.
a ship named after an extinct Native American group of people. And this is a uniquely American novel about going onto the ocean and, using the resources, the whales, and it's a multiracial crew, and there's a lot about democracy versus tyranny, and that whale that we are prepared to do everything and lash out against everything, and even if it brings us all down to catch, is Donald Trump's father's affection.
Aha.
That's
Donald
my
Trump's
theory.
father's affection, ladies and gentlemen, is the white whale. You heard it here first.
All right, 100,000.
For the insights.
This is
Okay.
not a MAGA crowd.
No, there were 8 people out of 100,000 people cheering, but I think they believe,
Yes,
the
they
fervor.
believe.
No, that's a great answer. That is a great answer. Well, on that note, thank you folks for tuning in and listening to our podcast. Thank you everyone for coming tonight.
Yes. Thank you to film editor and all-around raconteur Mike Saenz. Thanks to the North Door, Benny Burrito Webster, and the staff here for their wonderful hosting, and for and thank you to Lance Fever Myers, my co-host. Thank you to me, LB Dio.
Thank you to LB.
Thank you to our audience again.
Thank you to Connor Harrington for listening.
Thank you to Connor, who has
Shout out
listened to
to
every
Connor.
episode of this goddamn podcast. And we love him, and that is all the love we have in our hearts.
Go to our website, please, pov-publishing.com. You can read comics, you can read essays, poetry, you can buy my book. LB Dio has his own book that's coming out very, very soon.
Coming out in September, The Goddamn Fool. Why So Much is already out.
I've got nothing.
The man has got nothing. Mike Saenz has never produced a creative work of any genre or medium.
No, this is it.
Thank you, ladies and gentlemen. And good night!
See you next time.